It was 2 a.m. Ibrahim Traoré was still in his office. Phones were ringing nonstop. The central bank, president, economy minister, and several advisors were in an emergency meeting. Terrible news flashed on the screen. French banks want money transfers to Burkina Faso. Suspends loan payments. CFA franc. Buy and withdrawn from market. The country's economic collapse could begin with Traoré. Slammed his fist on the table. This is how they've controlled US for years. Even our money isn't our own. He turned to his team and laid out a plan so bold that everyone stared in disbelief. We can't do this, said the finance minister. Nobody has ever done it. Traoré smiled. Then we'll be thief. The tension in the presidential palace's meeting room was palpable outside. The lights of Ouagadougou city sparkled, while inside Burkina Faso there was being thrown into a firebrand. Trot walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out with thoughtful eyes. How much reserves do we have? He asked without earning. From the city doctor, Amina Khanathan, central bank president, looked at her file. Officially $400 million, but Mostov, it is held in accounts in Paris we can't access it now. In gold, asked Traoré, we have 78 tons of registry gold reserves, but Dr. Khanite hesitate, but that too is in France. Traoré completed with a bitter smile. Economy Minister Ousmane Zongo shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mr. President, you need to understand the seriousness of the situation you're threatening. Totally, the West African Economic Union rejecting the CFA franc is economic suicide. Traoré turned fire in high size or liberation. Tell me, Zongo, how can it be an independent country when we can't even print our own money? The CFA franc, the last chain of colonization, is on. Spread his hands all of Africa's. This system, Mali, Niger, Senegal, all off them, and all of them remain perpetual lipper, said Traoré, approaching the tableau. No, why? Because every time we're in a banknote, we have to deposit dollars to the French treasury in return to pay them to use our own money. Is this freedom? The meeting room fell into silence. Everyone knew Traoré was right, but there seemed to be no alternative. For 70 years, West African countries had used the CFA franc. The French colonial monetary system independence was just a piece of paper. Real power remained in Paris. Dr. Konate took a deep breath. President, we all know you're right, but what can we do? We don't have the infrastructure to create our own currency. No printing presses. And if people start withdrawing money from banks tomorrow morning, Traoré placed a file on the table. That's why I've been secretly planning this for the last 3 months. The advisors looked at the file line. Surprise operation. Sankara said, Terathamus. Sankara's unfinished financial independence. When he opened that file, everyone in the room gasped. Inside were detailed plans for a new currency to replace the CFA franc de Burkina. Gold, this is impossible, stammered the finance minister Orpharon. Exchange reserves are insufficient without international reckoning. Traoré smiled and pulled a small shiny disc from his pocket. It was a gold-colored coin, with a baobab tree on one side and the country's map on Theothar, prototype of the Burkina gold. Hesad, made from 100% domestic gold extracted from our own mines. Processing our own soil, but Dr. Konate searched for words. Foreign companies control our money. They monitor our gold exports. Traoré's eyes gleamed. Not anymore. The economy minister jumped to his feet. You nationalize the gold mines when officially tomorrow morning, said Traoré. But the operation began 3 hours ago. The army is now taking control of all mine. French and American companion executives are being politely escorted. The border, those in the room looked at each other in astonishment. The move was bold, dangerous, but also clever. What about boycott sanctions? Asked Dr. Ken. West will do everything to crush Yusuf. Of course, they will. Traoré confirm Theo want to punish us, but to punish us, they first need access to us. And this is where the second phase comes in. He pressed a button and a world map appeared on the screen. Certain countries were marked Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, India, Brazil. For the past 6 months, we've made secret agreements with those countries, said Traoré. Direct trade with their own currencies, bypassing $1 or euro. We'll sell our gold directly to these countries and they'll provide us with the technology and products we need. I didn't know about this, said the economy minister, his voice trembling. You didn't need to know, Traoré said kindly. If French intelligence had sensed even the slightest hint, the blockade we're experiencing today would have started months ago. Durkane took the coin in her hand, holding it to the light. Beautiful, she said, but will people accepted habits? Don changes elite, Traoré smiled. People haven't been storing gold at jewelers for years. We're offering them something of real value instead of worthless paper money bet. The real punch is here. He opened a Danathor file. Inside were designs for digital wallets, said Traoré, a free mobile app for every citizen. Gold-backed digital currencies, 100% transparent, secure. And most importantly, completely outside the Western banking system. The finance minister shook his head. This is croissant. Brilliant, but how will we convince it people just then? Traoré is the room, Mr. President. The connection is ready. Traoré turned to his team, convinced the people. Let me show you. The large screen came on screenware. Leaders from 5 different African countries. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin presidents, said Traoré. I believe we've all received the same news. The West has pulled its economic weapon again. But this time we're prepared to share our plan. 2 hours later when the meeting ended, there was a new energy in the room. Fear had given way. Total determination. Ibrahim Traoré looked at these advisors. Day was breaking dawn. It's coming, he said, not just in Ouagadougou, but across Africa. Dr. Kanadi closed her laptop. Will you make the announcement, Top? People, tomorrow morning. Traoré shook his head. Number. I'll do it now. People should know the truth before they go toothbank. They should feel pride, no panic. His request for an emergency broadcast to the national television station was approved within minutes. ASD team prepared. Traoré examined Theppertop in his hand one last time. The gold coin gleamed under the morning sun. Tomasenko, he whispered, as if addressing the ghost of their revolutionary leader today. We complete our unfinished work. At 6:30 a.m., asked people of Burkina Faso were preparing their breakfasts. They were surprised to see President Traoré on their televisions. He stood in his military uniform. But determined pole of Burkina Faso, he began. I appeared for you in these early hours to McKeon. Important announcement. Last night, French banks and Western financial institutions launched an economic war against our country. They cut off air access to our money. They stopped head transfers. They canceled loans and homes. And on street screens, people looked at each other with concern. Y'all know why they did this. Traoré, because we want our independence, because we demand control of our resources, because we say that Burkina Faso belongs to the Burkinabe. The camera zoomed in on the gold coin he held in his hand. From today, we stop using the colonial currency, the CFA franc. We start using our own money, the Burkina gold, a currency backed by 100% domestic gold, carrying real value. Then Horror held up his mobile phone, showing deep glowing on the screen. And this ISD Burkina digital wallet, it will distribute it free to every citizen. You no longer need banks for your money. The digital gold will be directly in your wallet. People stared at the screen in amazement. For some, this was a frightening change. For others, it was a long-awaited liberation. Don't worry, Spatro, as if reading their thoughts. Auth money in your CFA franc accounts will be converted to Burkina gold at twice the value. No one will Lazavirian will gain after this sentence. Cross the country's small cries of joyant, whispered questions could be heard. But most importantly, Traoré continued, we will be the ones controlling our money. We'll be the ones determining our destiny. And we are not doing this out neath screen split. And next to Jaime appeared the faces of other West African leaders. They all conveyed the same message. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin leaving the CFA franc system on Thesam Day at the same time and switching to their own gold-backed currency. This is not a revolution. It's an evolution. Say Traoré, the final link in our independence. Now we are truly free. Speech ended. Something extraordinary bond happening in the streets. Instead of rushing to banks and panic, people were discussing the Burkina digital wallet app they had started downloading on their phones. It was simple to use, sleek, and most importantly, it belonged to them. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. In Paris at 7:45 a.m. The French central bank was in an emergency meeting. The executive responsible for the Africa desk was looking at the data on the screen in horror. 6 countries left the system simultaneously, he said. Tremblingness is a coordinated move. And what more? Asked the bank president impatiently. The digital wallets have been downloaded millions of times in just a few hours. People are extinctus. There's no run on the banks. The president reached for his phone. I need to call the Ministry of Finance. We must start sanctions immediately. The ministry is already, Collins said, the assistant texting the phone. The voice on that phone was panicked. The mines or gun energy agreements canceled, permissions for military bases revoked. All of West Africa is slipping out of our control. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office monitoring international reactions. As expected, Western media was drawing doomsday scenarios. Economic collapse begins in Africa. West African countries commit suicide. Traoré condemns his people to starvation, but on the other hand, unexpected messages of support were coming in Russia, China, India, Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, all with congratulations, offers of cooperation, and promises to recognize your gold-backed currency. Dr. The room excited. You want Believe it, Mr. President, for millions of people have downloaded the app. That's nearly a fifth of our population. Trop smiled. People have tasted freedom tethers. No, going back now, and what's more, Dr. Koenig continued there. Thousands of downloads from other African countries to Ghana, Congo. Sagalivarian is talking about this. A week later, Ibrahim Traoré stood in a small village. Square villagers had gathered around him. An elderly farmer was looking at the phone in his hand. I don't know how to use this, Mr. President. He sagely. Traoré sat down next to him. Let me show you, he said gently. Look, when you press this button, your wallet opens, Harold. Can see how many Burkina golds ye have. The old man's eyes lit up. This is the real value of my money. Yes, father say. Try, and no one can take it from Yokind. Freeze your bank account. Can't stop. Transfer. This is your freedom. Devil Ledger pressed the mobile phone to Hishis for the first time. He said with a voice, I feel like my money is safe with me. This simple sentence confirmed the importance of what Traoré had done. This wasn't just an economic move. It was a psychological liberation. And World Bank analysts had predicted that Burkina Faso wouldn't. For weeks a month passed, and the economy was still standing. To months passed, and trade volume began to increase. 3 months later, Ibrahim Traoré was invited to the BRICS summit. At the meeting in Moscow, world leaders listened carefully to Traoré. Eastern and southern countries wanted to learn the details of West Africa's bold move. The gold standard was abandoned 50 years ago. Sadith, Russian leader, you're bringing it back is quite interesting. We haven't gone back to the past, true, replied, we're going to the future. Digital gold currency, backed by our own resources. These is next generation independence. The Chinese leader leaned forward. Your digital wallet technology is impressive. It could offer an alternative model. Fourth global financial system. After the summit, the agreements Traoré signed for his country created panic in the Western press. Direct energy and military agreements with Russia, technology and infrastructure projects with China, medicine and agriculture, cooperation with India, food security programs with Brazil, industry and education partnerships with Turkey. Westward headlines were alarming. Burkina Faso moving away from the West arena of Afrits, Xenia, Tros, dangerous game. But Traoré just smiled as he flew back to his country. We're not moving away from the West, he told Dr. Canetware, just moving closer to the whole world. We no longer have a single master, have many partners on his phone. The Burkina digital wallet app glowed. The statistics were impressive. 12 million active users, 2 million daily transactions across 6 countries, 0 downtime, 0 hacks. 6 months past. West Africa's gold-backed currency of Ovidento, the African gold. 14 African countries joined the system. The old colonial currency, the franc Fidadino. The pages of history. Ibrahim Traoré was now seen not just as a country leader, but as a pioneer of a continental movement. One morning at the opening of the new central bank of Burkina Faso building, Traoré stood at the podium behind magnificent gold-plated doors. The country's gold reserves proclaimed. From the West, we're secularists today. We're not just opening a building, he told the crowd. We're opening a new page in our history. Once our gold was kept in foreign vaults. Now it's here on our own soil, under our own control. Asked crowd applauded. A woman in the back rows was crying. She was Thomas Sankaras's wife, the widow of Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, the visionary killed in a coup in 1987. He would have loved to see this, she said, shaking Traoré's hand. Financial independence was his greatest dream. We're bringing his vision to life, said Traoré. But the only reason we can do this is because of seeds he planted. Outside the Sittite, the newly established Burkina Technology Center, young engineers were working. They were developing a new version of the digital wallet, a pimpode with blockchain technology, energy efficient, and most importantly designed and coded by Africans. Burkina Faso had not just created a currency, it had built an ecosystem from mining to refining, from digital technology to security. The entire system was designed by Africans for Afrikanci. IMF president was speaking in cameras with a forced smile. Dialogues with Burkina Faso and its elites continue. We are examining their new currency system. Translation: we can no longer stop them. We have to deal with them. The French president had embarked in an Africa tour. He was promising a new beginning to countries that were once just colonies, but no one believed the old stories anymore. At a press conference, an African journalist asked, how do you assess West African countries' transition to gold-backed currency? We respect independent decisions, said the French leader with a tense expression, but I'd like to warn about the risks. His words were cut off by laughter in the room. A year later, Ibrahim Traoré was once again on the international stage, this time at the United Nations General Assembly podium. His speech was short but powerful. A year ago, 6 countries took a bold step Today, 22 African countries use the United African Gold. Our inflation rate has dropped, or trade volume has increased. Our technological investments have tripled. Western delegates shifted uncomfortably, told us we couldn't do it. They told us we would. Collapse, they told us. We will starve. Traoré smiled, but we didn't tell him anything. We just did. iTunes ending applause filled the entire hall. African country had freed itself from centuries of economic bondage, and this was just the beginning. Music